I want to check in on the railroad industry in this segment. You might remember really big in the news was a clash between railroad unions and railroad companies over a number of benefits that railroad unions were trying to get for their workers, and they were threatening to go on strike. Biden ended up preventing that from happening, and we'll talk more about that in just a moment. But since then, hasn't really been a big thing in the news. I haven't talked about the railroad industry, the fight for more rights and benefits for workers within the industry since then. And so I want to check in on that now with some good news that we've seen, and to also kind of give out credit where it's deserved. This is not a story that's going to get as much coverage as the Trump stuff, and it's all so many things going on with politics right now. It's easy to forget stuff like this. So let's dive in. You might remember the agreement that I referenced, the prevention on the part of the Biden administration of this railroad strike, came end of last year, December of 2022. Railroad workers were preparing to go on strike in massive numbers because the unions and the companies, the railroad companies, could not come to an agreement on, specifically one of the big sticking points was paid sick leave. These railroad workers did not have paid sick leave, and they were demanding that. Companies weren't caving on that, and it was a standstill. And so the strike was about to happen in December of 2022. This would have caused, even though you absolutely understand why they're using their strength as workers to go on strike to try to get better benefits, it would have also caused an economic impact that would have been very, very negative. So Biden stepped in with the cooperation of Congress and forced upon the companies and the unions an agreement that did increase benefits for workers, but left out paid sick leave, which was such a big thing for the unions this time around in these negotiations. And so a lot of unions, again, this is end of last year, were really upset with or a lot of members of the unions were upset with Biden because it felt like he was betraying his obligation and his commitment to fight for the rights of workers and unions. And people called it siding with the corporations here. Biden's argument would be, well, I wasn't able to get Congress to do something more than that, and I had to prevent the strike. I can't allow an economic crisis like that. That would have hurt so many workers. And so this is kind of the better of two evils. Well, since that agreement that was really big in the news, a bunch of stuff has been happening and not getting that much coverage that has been really, really good on that front, kind of behind the scenes fights day after day to get these very benefits that weren't quite gotten back at the end of last year. And that's what I want to talk about. Well, the White House is involved a little bit. Bernie Sanders has been a big advocate. And then, of course, the largest amount of credit goes to the railroad unions and their workers for getting paid sick leave. So this was reported on kind of a couple months after this big possible economic crisis based on this strike. And Reuters reported that top White House officials spoke to executives from the largest U.S. railroad operators in recent days, renewing pressure to reach an agreement to secure paid sick leave for workers after President Joe Biden signed legislation to block a national railroad strike in December. And then it talks about how members of Biden's administration were still, the point of this article was they're still trying to get involved. And even though they had to prevent the strike and had to prevent workers from fighting for the paid sick leave through the strike, they were still getting involved in trying to make this happen. And then we get the news, and I'm not saying this all goes to the White House, not even close. Again, unions are doing the work. But I'm just glad to see that the White House, in some sense, stuck to their promise to continue staying involved. This is the another Reuters report. More than 60% of U.S. unionized railroad workers at major railroads are now covered by new sick leave agreements, a trade group said Monday. Last year, railroads came under fire for not agreeing to paid sick leave during labor negotiations, and then talks about what I just said about averting the strike, and then goes through how while 40% still of railroad workers who are in unions don't have paid sick leave agreements, 60% now do, and that's a huge improvement. One other person within the political world that deserves a whole lot of credit is, and this is being reported on from Mother Jones, Bernie Sanders. It says railroad workers kept applying pressure for sick days It's working. After Biden averted a strike, it looked like a loss on sick days, but unions have made big gains in recent months with help from Senator Bernie Sanders, and it talks about how he's been putting a lot of pressure, and that's absolutely the case. Credit to him. Advocates, and the reason, another one that I'm talking about the story today, is the quality of our leaders matters. Because yes, on huge things that we're talking about day after day, we can kind of keep an eye and say, hey, can you do this? Make sure you're not going along with election lies, or make sure that you're on the right side of reproductive freedom, or make sure that you're for universal health care. But also, there are a lot of smaller things that won't get as much coverage, not in the impact they have, which is massive, but in the steps that can be taken from the politicians, not voting on something, but just applying pressure that has a huge impact. And we don't really know how great it is until someone's doing it. And Bernie Sanders has just been doing it. He's just been putting on the pressure, as has apparently some within the White House. And then the largest amount of work and pressure has been the unions themselves, the workers in the unions. And that is really great to see. So worker advocacy, it has an impact. Now people have paid sick leave that they didn't have before. Credit to leaders within the union organizations, and then also such as Bernie Sanders. And in some sense, I'm glad that Biden, who said after this last agreement, we're going to get more paid sick leave, or we're going to get paid sick leave agreements. It just can't be now because of the situation that was present at the end of 2022. It's good to see that. I don't know how much involvement Biden has had, but at least that expectation or commitment of we're going to see more paid sick leave agreements is coming true. Really, really good all around. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to be a part of what makes this show possible, plus get access to the full video version of the show hours before all the clips are able to be uploaded to the YouTube channel, plus get the bonus show on the weekends, you can do so by going to lukebeasleyshow.com/membership. That's lukebeasleyshow.com/membership, and there's a link in the description.